do now applies greatly to lunge and to even what a lot of personal trainers will do, the walking lunge, or to single leg squat, or even things such as running, where the internally rotating knee is a problem and is likely causing problems with the kneecap and the patellofemoral joint. So what we're going to do is we're going to wrap the rubber tubing around where you pop your leg up. We're going to do a single leg squat with a little bit of a challenge, and if you need a bit of a supporting hand to get his balance, that's fine. Let's bend the knee and go to sort of not too deep, that's enough. And up again. So we're just going to make sure the rubber tubing is below the level of the kneecap on the patella tendon, and we're pulling it across his body. And his muscles, the BMO, vastus medialis, as well as the deep gluteal muscles, will activate a little more than they normally would in order to keep things aligned, and thereby the pain is reduced. Another 2. Finding it, you'll feel that muscle burning in there. Stop. The rubber tubing essentially will activate different things depending upon which way we're pulling with the rubber tubing, and this is essential to understanding how we could improve the safety and the effectiveness of squat. Just a simple squat without making it more complex or even putting on heavy weights. Pulling this direction, off you go Craig. What muscles do you think that's going to increase the load on? In my understanding, it will increase the load of all the lumbar extensors. So if a client has a tendency towards a sore back from a lot of sitting, and they tend to round their back a lot in squat, then this exercise and the rubber tubing in this way will actually enhance the muscles that keep his lower back in extension. So multifidus would be one of the muscles that we would assume will be activated through pulling it in this direction. I could pull a little harder on one side than the other for a bit of a unique effect. Try and straighten up for me, Craig. Try and straighten up. That's it. Hold it straight. Off you go. So we're going to work on one myofascial sling direction more than the other. We could do that. So pulling the rubber tubing forward in front of the client will activate the lumbar extensors, particularly the deep stabilizers of the lower spine. But if we pull backwards, what we should find is that we actually activate more the deeper abdominals and even the core, perhaps transversus and even pelvic floor might be more activated. So I'm going to just exert a backward pull. And the net effect of this will be to increase the flexion moment of squat. And with certain types of lower back pain, it will make it actually feel better. So while we are enhancing the different stability muscles, we are hopefully going to reduce the pain. So you should do the experiment. Does it take away the pain when you pull forwards or when you pull back? Do the experiment, no harm done, and the client will usually feel quite a different effect with each different exercise. So this one will really enhance the abdominal workout during squat. Every personal trainer who's had a client who's struggled with squat has probably tried a Swiss ball wall squat. So there's nothing new about that. But what we're going to do here is to get a lot more specific about what the effect of the rubber tubing is going to have on his lower back. Because usually this sort of exercise is constructed in order to help a rehabilitation process for the lower back, especially for discs perhaps. So the rubber band can be placed in 2 different locations at the back here, and each location will contribute to one or the other of our 2 systems that we talked about. If I place the rubber band down on the top of his pelvis, have a think about that. So it's at or just below the level of your belt line, and if I then get Craig to do some squats and hold it there, the rubber band is going to be trying to posteriorly tilt his pelvis. And don't forget, that's a bit high risk. We're actually trying to minimize posterior tilt as he goes down into a squat. So this rubber band on the pelvis forces a bit of effort towards an anterior tilt. And the multifidus muscles will be the ones specifically that work extra hard. So you may find that with the rubber tubing on during this, he can go a little deeper without any pain. or perhaps it takes away the pain altogether where there was some significant pain before. The other option to suggest is that if you put the rubber band actually up into his lumbar spine a little bit higher, and again, don't pull too hard, that will just simply improve the joint position of the lumbar spine. It will keep it in a more neutral position without letting it drop into flexion and posterior tilt. So Craig will feel a slightly different action with those two different locations of the rubber band. And one or the other or both may take away the pain and give him that quad workout, that glute workout that he's been looking for. But at the same time will actually rehabilitate his lumbar spine. We're going to take this rubber tubing on the treadmill concept a little bit further now. And what we're going to get Craig to try is the rubber tubing around each of his 2 feet. Up over his body from the front, wrapping around the back of his neck, quite low as you can, not up on the top of his neck, and then back down to the other foot. This will feel quite strange for him as he's beginning to walk, and even as he gets into running, he'll feel quite strangely, hopefully, light-footed, as if something is lifting his foot just as he's hitting the ground each time. Now that will inspire other mechanisms, other running mechanisms, and the primary one we want to inspire there and actually help is the knee drive or the foot lift. Now if you've done any reading into good running biomechanics, you might have come across a fellow named Dr. Romanov, who has developed something called the pose technique. And central to the pose technique is this concept of falling slightly forward as if gravity was allowing you to fall. And as you're doing it, you're working very hard to concentrically fire off your hamstrings just as you hit the ground with each foot. So this rubber tubing will actually neuromuscularly help Craig to run a bit better, according to that Romanov method, which I do concur with, improves running performance and minimizes injury. And that's what this inspires. Now, the other thing that the rubber tubing does on Craig here is it actually encourages taller posture because it gives him something to fight against. So we're actually activating all of his thoracic and lower cervical extensors. So experiment with this to see if you can actually reduce a niggling knee pain or a niggling shin problem or an Achilles problem, to see if this rubber tubing, and there are other ways of doing it as well, will actually reduce pain, if not simply give a very unusual workout.